Hi, Jaquarius. Hi, Avery. Hi, Hadley. Hi, Logan. Mackenzie, Michaela, Lily George, Reed, Remy, Lindley Latch, Lillian, Britannic, Daniel, Mary Nancy, Aiden, Knox, Lindley Ship, Eli, Zyrian, Amarian, Kalia, Matias, ¿cómo estoy? Nadric, and Uriah. Hope you're doing well, because we're getting ready to talk about similes and metaphors. So I'm going to move my Peacock journal out of the way so we can see that. We're going to talk a little bit about similes and metaphors within the context of Harry Potter, but also just in general, because this is a review for you. Here's my peacock feather. And at the end of it, you see what's called a plume. So I'm going to use that as my pointer. In Harry Potter, they use these with the feathers to dip into their ink and write. And this is a real one, by the way. Similes and metaphors. When we began studying, I think it was 16 this year in reading, we talked about figurative language and idioms and various other topics, but we began with similes and metaphors. So if we look at our iReady book here, lesson 19 goes through the introduction up here. All of this should seem very familiar to you because we've been doing it for a long time. So this is a review. It's just that I want you to not only review the skill, but focus on it as you are reading. Integrate it into your analysis of reading passages, particularly when you're in novels or dialogue-based novels, like fiction, such as Harry Potter. But when authors are wanting to help readers imagine what one thing is like, they can compare it to something that is not like it. And that's called a simile. And typically you're going to see the word like. Comparisons, as we know from comparing and contrasting in reading, comparisons find ways things are alike. The difference is that a simile does it by comparing two typically unlike things. But it's not a contrast. It's different than that. It helps readers picture what is being described by showing how two things are alike in some way. For example, Alicia's dog, Ollie, so they're giving us non-essential information there, which we've already studied in appositives, bringing that skill in too, has paws as big as dinner plates. There you see as, meaning if it's as big as dinner plates, he's got some pretty big paws. His bark sounds like thunder, meaning it's booming. It's very, very loud. He has a very loud bark. So using as and like in this context is a simile. It does not mean every time you see the word as or like, it's a simile. We've talked about that in class. But if it's comparing two ordinarily unlike things in a way to emphasize something, that typically is the figurative language usage of a simile. A metaphor is a little bit stronger than a simile because it does not use like or as. It typically will use a be verb form, is, am, are, was, were, will be, or it can just restate it. And that would be a metaphor. It makes a comparison without using the word like or as, such as Ollie is, there's your be verb, is a mountain of a dog. Well, if Ollie's a dog is not like a mountain. So what they're saying is he's a mountain of a dog. What is a mountain? Something very, very enormous and non-movable, actually. So Ollie would probably not be a miniature dachshund. He is probably something like a great St. Bernard, because he's a mountain of a dog. You'll see in your guided practice down here where if you look at mine, for example, I'll just flash this down. I went ahead and circled these like I taught you to do in class. Make use of it. It's your workbook, write in it. If you see a be verb form, that's going to lead you to conclude that, oh, this is probably not a simile. This is going to be a metaphor. Ollie's mouth was a trap that held a giant stick. Ollie leaped toward Alicia like a clumsy ballerina. Like would indicate a simile, just like in this one. Ollie raced past Alicia like a strong wind, meaning very quickly and swiftly. Suddenly, Ollie was a freight train racing into the house. Didn't mean he turned into a train. It means he started moving very fast and he was super strong. That's what that meant. So, if we go to, and I'm just looking at the Sorcerer's Stone, since we've already read that. I'm just opening up here to a couple examples. So let me slip that under there, and you can see it. We're talking here in chapter 7, the sorting hat. And it says, Harry had never even imagined such a strange and splendid place. It was lit by thousands and thousands of candles that were floating in midair over 4 long tables. Oh, it's the dining hall, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering gold plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Sounds just like the cafeteria, doesn't it? Not. Sarcasm. Professor McGonagall led the first years up here so that they came to a halt in a line facing the other students, with the teachers behind them. The hundreds of faces staring at them looked like pale lanterns in the flickering candlelight. Like pale lanterns. Pale means kind of softly appearing. In other words, not very bright because they're sort of floating in the darkness. It was dimly lit. So that would be an example of a simile, like pale lanterns. And if we flip over here to, let's see, chapter 9, the midnight duel, we see Harry's broom jumped into his hand at once, but it was one of the few that did. Hermione Granger's had simply rolled over on the ground. It sounds like they're working with Madame Hooch, learning how to fly on their brooms. Remember that? And Neville's, poor Neville, hadn't moved at all. Perhaps brooms, like horses, could tell when you were afraid, although, Harry thought, there was a quaver in Neville's voice that said only too clearly that he wanted to keep his feet on the ground. He was not looking forward to that, and we know why, because we've read through that already. So, like horses, not meaning 4-legged, but comparing it to that they sensed things, because horses are very, very sensitive. They can read your emotions, sort of like dogs do. And that's what they're saying in here, that the brooms were very sensitive that way. So, as we're talking about similes and metaphors, and you keep reading through, I know we're past the Sorcerer's Stone. Some of you are very far into the series, and some of you are in the middle, so I don't want to give anything away. But as you're reading, pay attention to similes and metaphors, and you'll notice J.K. Rowling, as such a phenomenal writer that she is, does not overuse them. She uses them sparingly, like salt in your food. You want a little bit to enhance the flavor, but not too much, because it overwhelms the actual flavor and makes it unpalatable. Tastes bad. You don't want to read anymore either. So, there you go. Similes and metaphors, and you should be very good at these. And I will talk with you soon.